Welcome everybody to today's Link and Learn webinar presented by Learnovate. My name is Richard Hart and I'm a UX specialist at Learnovate and a member of the Innovation Services team. Today we have an exciting agenda lined up for you around the area of immersive learning technology. Firstly, our in-house tech lead Bilal Ahmed will give a presentation on immersive learning technology with respect to its evolution, current state of the art and future trends. Then I will give you a demonstration of a piece of immersive learning technology that we are developing here at Learnovate. Finally, we will be joined by a panel of immersive technology experts, where we will discuss the use of immersive technology in education and industry. If you wish to learn more, hear more about Learnovate events, research, podcasts, and other center activities, you can sign up to our newsletter on our website or in the short survey that Louise will circulate after the event. We would love to talk to any of you who are interested in Learnovate membership. Again, you can request a follow-up in the post-event survey. Now it's over to Dr. Bilal Ahmed for his presentation on immersive learning technology. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining our Link and Learn webinar. Today I'm going to talk about how immersive technology can increase learning engagement. My name is Bilal Ahmed and I'm a research fellow and tech lead at Trinity College Dublin within the Learnovate Research Center. So I will begin my presentation with this quote from Albert Einstein, who states that learning is experience. Everything else is just information. So you will see that throughout the presentation and even our work in the last few months with our industry partners as well as research, that we have followed this philosophy. Rather than just giving users notebooks and presentations for learning, we have tried to create an experience-based immersive learning platform, which my colleague Richard will show you. But before that, let's have a quick look at what I'm going to be talking about. Firstly, I will talk about what is immersive learning technology. Secondly, I will show you briefly how it evolved during the last couple of centuries and reached the stage where it is now in the form of virtual reality, augmented reality, and the related experiences. I will then use my research to compare between the traditional ways of learning and how immersive learning can be an advantage in comparison with the old school ways. After that, I will present some of the more advantages of immersive learning and some of the caveats to it. Followed by that, when everybody is convinced that immersive learning can be beneficial, I will present a framework that will help practitioners to choose immersive technology in a specific situation. Finally, I will highlight some of the key trends in the recent times, which we are trying to follow in our project as well. And then my colleague will present you the platform which we have developed in the last few months. So let's begin and start about what is immersive learning technology. So in simple words, it's any tools and platforms that make use of virtual reality, augmented reality, or extended reality for the purposes of learning can be collectively called as immersive learning technology. On the right side, you can see a few examples of immersive learning technology like virtual reality, which is where the user is completely encompassed in a different space and time, and it can include visual, auditory, or tactile experiences. Then the second one is augmented reality, which basically adds on to your existing reality. You may have seen a famous game recently like Pokemon Go, or even there are few applications in the market which you can use to go to a store and then see the details of the products using your application. Now, the next one is mixed reality, which is nothing but a combination of virtual reality and augmented reality. Finally, extended reality is an umbrella term used to define or to classify these different types of immersive technologies. So in general, when we think about reality and virtual reality, we think them as just two binary concepts, but it's actually a continuum of the level of immersion which user feels. So for that, Professor John Milgram from University of Toronto presented this reality virtuality continuum to explain the subtle differences between them. Firstly, we have got real environment where we interact with daily living objects to learn about them. Then comes the augmented reality, where the digital objects are overlaid on our reality. And then comes the augmented virtual reality, where real objects are projected and controlled in the virtual world. And finally, we have got the virtual reality, where the user is immersed in the digital reality. So as you can see, so on the left, it's reality, complete reality, then it's mixed, and then together on the right, three are collectively known as extended reality. Now, a bit about the history as well. So it all began with in the late 18th century, when we wanted to improve the experience for the images, and then Robert Barker's panorama came into existence. After that, the concept kept on evolving, and we reached a stage where we had stereoscopic photography. And then when in the early 20th century, when the flight operations become a common trend, then the pilots were trained using pilots started getting training using the Link Trainer flight simulator. And then after that, it just started improving rapidly, as we have seen in the late 20th century. The concepts of immersive technology and virtual reality started to appear in the magazines. Then in the 1960s, we had our first VR-based machine called Sensorama, and our first heads displays. And after that, you can see in the recently it's improved rapidly, and we have seen projects like Oculus, Social VR, and I think the future is sky is only the limit for this type of technologies. Now, talking about the traditional versus immersive learning, I will just give you the three key areas where immersive learning can create a great impact. Number one is the presence. Presence in a sense that when the user is immersed in an actual environment or feels like they're in the real environment where they will be performing a task, then it increases their level of presence and attention. And second one is attention, which of course is increased because of the feeling of presence. And then they also feel enjoyment because of completing a certain task, rather than just going through a list of steps they have to take in to complete their duties. Now, in terms of research, there was a comparison done by Accenture. There was a case study where a group of participants were given a task, assembly task, and like half of the participants used video-based training to learn about that, and the other half used the virtual reality-based training. And you can see the clear difference in the results, that those participants who used VR for training, they had 12% higher accuracy in comparison with those who learned through video-based training program. Similarly, the task to completion was much less for those who trained using the virtual reality-based experience. Another evidence justifying the benefits of immersive learning is this research paper, where people were trained for an accident in an airline using a safety card and a VR-based game. And the results were, you can see the results are very clear in a sense that before and even after the training, there was no difference in the knowledge retention. But after a week, those participants who learned the same thing through VR game had more retention than those who just followed a typical safety card we see in airlines. Also, as immersive learning has the potential to invoke affective reactions like positive and negative, so it invoked fear in participants rather than just going through the safety cards, which eventually led to better engagement of the participants. So now we know that immersive learning can be much better for knowledge retention in comparison with traditional ways. But then the next question that comes in mind is that there's a variety of immersive learning technologies, from VR to AR to XR. So which one to use? So when cost is a big factor, then there is another study that was conducted to see a difference between a low fidelity experience and a high fidelity experience. And now that was specifically in the domain of the project called iWorkSafe, which we have worked on during the last few months. It was about training the workers in a safety critical context to learn about hazards and identifications. So in that case, a group of participants used a Oculus Rift, which was high fidelity and very costly. And the other group of participants used a low fidelity 360-degree based panorama experience on their machines or mobile applications. So the findings were really interesting because the participants found experience or learning there was not much difference in their learning using both platforms. And even because initially the test was done with the students, so they felt no difference. But in case of the professionals or the people who are working in such contexts, they mentioned that or the results of hazard identification index was a bit more than that. So from here, we can say that even if we use low fidelity experiences, then we can get the training done in much better ways rather than just relying on old style PowerPoint slides or the lectures. Again, some of the benefits of immersive learning, as I mentioned earlier, it invokes effective reactions, positive and negatives. The user feels in control when they are in that environment, whether it's a 360-degree panorama or a virtual reality experience. Also, it's distraction-free, and the user learns by doing things, and the user can practice stuff, which makes them perfect before actually executing a task. And then it brings learning to life, and it's a safe way to experience critical operations. And also we can incorporate data analytics along with the immersive solutions, which can be further beneficial. Some of the caveats of immersive learning are the motion sickness, specifically in the context of low fidelity experiences, where the perception of surroundings does not fit with the mechanics of the experience. Cognitive overload could be another problem of the immersive learning. When there is a lot going on in a specific environment, then we should structure our training in such a way that the users should focus on the specific things. Also, another problem with such kind of solution is the isolated experiences. So we should try to develop solutions that have collaborative exercises for the learners. Also, the focus of these experiences should be very clear rather than having the other parts of the environment making more attractive for the user. Similarly, if we use high fidelity experiences, then the physical discomfort can be caused by long usage of head-mounted displays and other devices. Also, cost, again, one of the big factors if we are going for high fidelity experiences, and also it takes a lot of time to develop bespoke solutions in that using high fidelity or head-mounted displays. Now, the question is, when should we use immersive learning? So before I go into that, firstly, it's not a silver bullet, but it can, of course, augment or improve your learning experience. And the next question that comes to mind is that what's the return on investment? So it depends on what type of learning you want the user to gain from it. For example, whether it's a simple thing the learner wants to do, or it's a complex one, and whether you want the knowledge to be retained just for recall or for synthesis purposes. So if it's very simple bit of information, then old school exercises might work. But if it's complex information which the user has to recall as well as synthesize, then immersive experiences like virtual reality might be the best bet. Examples of some of these cases where you can use immersive learning technology are collaborative army training, visualizing the molecules, high-risk tasks like in safety critical context, surgeons doing surgery, and games and related aspects. So in terms of the future and what's currently on the horizon and the beyond, you can see there are different types of technologies used for training, from micro learning to gaming, but immersive learning is on the boom. So there was recently a survey conducted by a training magazine, and they found out that immersive learning is constantly getting attention since the pandemic. And now 32% of the professionals are trying to make their training immersive. And also another important finding was the evaluation method, which was about the type of evaluation is done, like we are focusing more on behaviors now. So you will see within the iWork Safe platform as well, which my colleague will show you, that we have used immersive simulation, considering the cost as well, so that the cost is less and also it's quick to develop rather than developing the time-consuming high fidelity experiences. And we have also tried to measure the behavior change of the users after they have used that platform. So I will now ask my colleague to show you the platform before just going through these final couple of points. So some of the other related technologies or other trends are the Facebook metaverse, as you might be familiar with, and the West Pharma, again, very similar to what you will see in the iWorkSafe. And on the right side, you can see the trends in the increase of the application of VR and AR-based content creation. So that's it from me. Now to demo by my colleague, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Bilal. That was a real whirlwind tour of. I'm amazed how much you managed to fit into a 15-minute presentation, from the concept of immersive learning to how it's used and how it compares to traditional learning and the evolution and the applications and the future trends. It was a really brilliant presentation. So thank you for that. And in our panel discussion later on, we might touch on some of the aspects of immersive technology that Bilal discussed in his presentation. So thanks for that, Bilal. And like Bilal mentioned at the end of his presentation, here at Learnovate, we have been doing some work in the immersive technology space. And one of the projects we're working on involves the whole area of safety critical training, which is an area that Bilal identified in his presentation as something, an aspect of learning that could benefit from immersive technology. The fact that it gives users the ability to practice things in a safe environment without being exposed to any danger. So with that in mind, I am now going to give a quick 10-minute demo of a tool called iWorkSafe, which we have been working on here in Learnovate. If you just bear with me, I'm going to share my screen. So the name of the project is iWorkSafe, and this was born out of some experiences we had with our industry partners who identified a number of reasons why safety critical training wasn't really engaging learners in the way they thought it should. And there was a number of reasons for this. A lot of it has to do with the delivery of the learning, and how learners were understanding the impact of safety in their everyday lives. And often safety training is siloed, or it is just used as a kind of a box ticking exercise. So together with some industry partners who work in the field of manufacturing and food and beverage and the energy sector, we decided to design a platform called iWorkSafe, which sought to use not only immersive learning technology, but also add elements of personalization and gamification and scenario-based learning to enhance the learning outcomes of safety critical training and improve the experience for the learner. So now I'm going to share a quick demonstration of that very platform. So I hope everyone can see that. So iWorkSafe is a learning experience platform for safety critical training. So based on our research with industry experts, we found that learners were having trouble engaging with safety critical training. Learners did not see the benefit of this type of training and did not consider it a memorable or rewarding experience. This was leading to a lack of understanding from learners on the impact safety could have on their work and their life outside of work. We therefore wanted to design a learning experience platform that created a personalized, immersive learning experience, which learners could reflect on and understand the impact of what they had learned. Immersive learning has been shown to increase engagement and consolidate the learning experience, as Bilal showed in his earlier presentation. So our learner is about to log into the platform. Let's follow their learning journey. So upon entering the iWorkSafe platform for the first time, the learner will straight away be prompted to complete their learner profile. Profile building task consists of 8 steps. The learner is prompted for several pieces of information, as well as basic profile information such as name, etc. The platform asks for relevant info on the learner's work role and context, interest, and experience. Here we capture information about the learner's role and work context, whether they work, what part of the factory they work in, and what role they're engaged in. Here we capture information about the learner's interests and hobbies. So why are we looking for this information? The intention of capturing this information is threefold. Research shows that having a personalized and contextualized experience will increase engagement for the learner and result in better learning outcomes. We want to give the learner the feeling that it is going to be a personalized experience and not a generic compliance-style piece of training. Capturing some contextual information, such as the factory location and the role, will allow the platform to direct the learner to the most relevant learning content. And finally, we want to use this information at later points in the learner journey to create a greater understanding for the learner in terms of how a safety incident could impact their lives. For example, how could a particular type of accident functionally affect one of their specific hobbies or interests? The platform goes on to capture some baseline measurements of the learner's attitude to safety. This will be important for reference later in the learner journey as we seek to periodically measure the learner's changing attitude to safety over the course of their learning and reflection. To optimize the learner's experience, we also ask them to select what device they're going to use to engage with the learning content, in this case, a desktop, and we allow them to choose an avatar to add a further level of personalization to the experience. Once the learner reviews their profile, they can now go forward to engage in the immersive learning experience. iWorkSafe provides learners with an opportunity to engage in a number of learning experiences. Each experience consists of a number of areas, and each area consists of a number of scenes. Upon completing their profile, the learner will be provided with an experience to complete. If you recall, the learner has selected in their profile that they work primarily in areas associated with manufacturing facilities. Therefore, the learner has been presented with the manufacturing experience. There are 3 areas to complete: common area, warehouse, and laboratory. Common area has already been completed for the purpose of this demo. Therefore, we will go straight to the warehouse area. The learner enters the warehouse and is asked to negotiate the area and interact with hotspots. For example, they might answer questions about which PPE is required in this part of the warehouse. Hotspots, which are activated by learner touch, hover, or click, serve to provide information, scaffolding on previous learning, ask knowledge check questions to check for understanding before moving to consolidated learning and assessment tasks, or to provide relevant information to the learner that they will later use in the problem-solving scenario. The learner is provided with feedback upon answering a question. If the learner has provided the wrong answer, they will be provided with feedback on why this is wrong and may be directed to where they can find the correct information. It should be noted that at this point, that the areas can be designed to reflect the actual environment within the learner's specific workplace, or can be generic areas provided by the platform. For the purpose of this demo, we just populated the platform with 360 images of common workplaces. The iWorkSafe platform would allow organizations to capture their own 360 images or videos and embed them into the system, and then add their own hotspots and feedback mechanisms which are relevant to the context of their training and environment. Apologies, my screen stopped sharing there for a sec. I'm just gonna reshare. Now, once the learner returns to the dashboard after finishing their manufacturing experience, they will be directed to the next area, which is the laboratory. Once they complete all of those, the dashboard now shows that there is a problem-solving scenario for the learner to complete. Problem-solving scenario is intended to allow the learner to apply the knowledge that they have acquired from completing the areas in the manufacturing experience. The problem-solving scenario will reflect a real-life scenario that the learner could face in their specific work environment. Let's start. A scenario preamble informs the learner of the context. They are provided with general instructions on what they are expected to do. The learner is told that they need to negotiate 4 scenes within the scenario. Realistic sounds such as fire alarms will be played throughout the scenario, providing enhanced immersion and distraction linked to the real-world situation. Research shows that adding cognitive burdens that reflect what a learner would face in reality can enhance the learning. There is also a time limit placed on the scenario to add additional urgency for the learner. The learner will be asked to answer questions in relation to what they are observing while navigating the scenario. The learner is presented with a question and must answer the question to move to the next scene. The user is now allowed to navigate through the warehouse. Here, the learner has encountered a potential hazard and will need to choose the right option based on what they have learned during the manufacturing experience. Here, the learner has encountered another obstacle. The learner continues to negotiate hazards and is continuously asked to make a decision. Notice that the learner is not provided with feedback on the decisions. This will come at the end of the scenario. When the learner finishes the scenario, they are shown a report card, which will show them the decisions they made correctly and where they erred. The scorecard will also contain a gamified element, which assigns points based on correct answers and time taken. This data will be sent to the L&D manager for further analysis. Finally, having completed the experience, the learner is now directed to the reflection area. We consider reflection activities important to consolidate the learning and to allow the learner to consider what they have learned and link it to the real-world applications. Research shows that understanding of the learning material and the perceived impact of the potential consequences of a safety-critical incident are multiplied by a structured period of post-learning reflection. The learner will be asked to carry out the first reflection activity immediately after completing the experience, but then will be directed to complete additional activities 1 week and then 1 month after the initial training. This is to reinforce and refresh their training in a just-in-time manner. Again, the user will be asked to measure their attitude to safety. This can be compared to the baseline measurements they gave during the profile and can be continuously measured during their reflection activities. Users can fill in free text about what they thought of the training and if it taught them anything about training or about safety. It can ask them how they might apply their training in a home context, in a work context, and it also takes information that the user gave during their profile building, for example, interests and hobbies, and tries to relate a specific accident that might occur and how it might impact on their hobbies or interests. Finally, the user will review their reflections, and then these reflections will be presented back to them when they complete their next reflection activity. Upon returning to the dashboard, the user can access any of the previous learning they engaged in, update their profile, or view their current report cards. The learner will receive notifications via email to log into their iWorkSafe platform when further activities need to be completed. Thank you for your attention. For more information on the iWorkSafe project at Learnovate, please contact myself, Bilal, or any of the members of Learnovate in Louisa's post-session communications. Thank you. So that was the iWorkSafe platform. We are now going to be joined by a panel of industry experts, where we will discuss some of the topics that we have brought up today and ask them for their experience using immersive technology. So welcome to today's panel, and I'm delighted to say we are joined by Bilal Awan, CEO of Virtuality, a company which is developing an immersive experience to help people to live better social, personal, and family lives. Camille Donegan, who apart from being creative director at Solus VR, is a virtual reality meditation app available on Oculus and mobile stores, is also a general guru in the area of VR. And Susan Talbot, Immersive Technology SkillNet, a learning network for Irish businesses of all sizes in the immersive technology sector to expand their immersive capabilities through tailored, subsidized learning programs. Hello, everybody.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Hi. Hi there.
No problem. So thanks for joining us. And I think we have a great variety of expertise on the panel today. So I might do a quick round table and just get each of you to introduce yourself and your experience with immersive technology. We might start with you, Bilal, in Virtuality. You can tell us what you're doing and how you're using immersive technology.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Richard, and glad to be here. As you mentioned, in Virtuality, we are helping people with their mental health by helping psychologists to treat phobias and anxiety. And what we are using is virtual reality as a standard platform, but we have added on AR and then AI module into that one. And the newer technology which we have embedded is volumetric videos, the real videos, which we're working on. And based on our clinical trials, two things we have achieved. One, it has increased over 90% patients' condition. They felt much better in their phobias and anxiety after they gone through the treatment. And secondly, it has reduced up to 50% treatment time versus traditional, as Bilal Ahmed mentioned earlier, a cognitive load. We are using cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and that has increased. I would say our modules are helping CBT to more immersify the treatment and bring much quicker betterment in the patients.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. And it's a real application of immersive technology in the healthcare sector.
Yes.
I might jump to Camille then, who is also involved in a lot of different projects around VR. And Camille, maybe you could tell us about some of the projects you're working on.
Sure. Thanks, Richard. Hi, everyone. So I'm a virtual reality producer. I've been producing primarily VR, but also augmented reality experiences for about 5-6 years now. And several of those in the training and learning space, partnering with Adaptus Training. Some of you might know Dr. Celine Mullins. So 3 projects that I guess I'd like to mention today in that space are a series of VR scenarios to help teenagers with anxiety. That was a project with CAMS, and it's nominated for a Health Tech Innovation Award. We'll know in a couple of days if we win that. And that's actively being used in CAMS in Galway and Roscommon, and I have some findings and metrics I can share around our pilot for that. I also worked on a plumbing training app for woodies. We quite quite randomly. We had some really great findings and metrics for that I can share. And that was working with the motor skills learning that you have through doing in virtual reality. All of the experiences I work on have to be experienced in a headset. That's really important to the immersion and to the presence and to the agency that the user can carry out. And also to mention an award-winning piece for FBD Insurance to increase confidence. So we talk about success metrics. You mentioned that, Richard. Confidence building is a really important use case, and actually a lot of the both healthcare and training applications that I've produced, confidence building is one of the key metrics that we're looking at. So in FBD, we were increasing the confidence of new trainees to hit the ground running on the sales floor, which is a really intimidating environment, and working with all the environmental distractions that you can really bring to life in the nature of the VR medium.
Brilliant. That sounds really interesting, Camille, and I'm glad you mentioned the hardware, i.e. the headsets. And I think that's something that when people hear VR, they automatically think of headsets. That's become kind of the synonymous with virtual reality. And it's something that we might come back to in a few minutes. But before we do, I will introduce our third panelist. Susan, you are involved in kind of the education around immersive technology. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do and how you try to teach Irish businesses about hopefully the benefits of immersive technology.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yes, SkillNet, Immersive Technology, SkillNet, we provide subsidized training and learning development for Irish-based companies. We do that in a couple of ways, either directly working with the company for their in-house training, or we develop programs and offer them out publicly, and we look at trends, or we're approached by individuals to run training, or we periodically do skills gap analysis, and we see where the gaps are in the market. Yeah, I came into immersive technologies a little sideways through film and television production. I was an editor for years, and then I moved into drone technology. And I suppose my first experience with immersive technology was the whole idea of photogrammetry and digital twinning around surveys and using drones for surveys. And around about 2 years ago, what was really interesting was, you know, I'm a bit of a Trekkie, but I was roped into a Star Wars session and watching The Mandalorian when it first came out in a series form. And at the same time, during the pandemic, during lockdown, my 15-year-old son was shouting at the top of his voice upstairs playing Fortnite. And then I didn't make the connection that both had something to do with Epic Games. So that crossover of game technology into entertainment production-wise, and then becoming multi-sectoral because of the software that they develop. So Immersive Technology, SkillNet, we look after companies who develop augmented reality, virtual reality, UX, UI in that space, but also game development and virtual production, which has become its own stream of immersive technology.
Wow, as a Trekkie, it was kind of written in the stars that you would get into this kind of area. Like, it's all very sci-fi, isn't it?
It is, and I've always been drawn to that, to the technical side of creativity.
Bilal, I'm interested in what you're doing, because this is kind of like, you know, addressing kind of acute needs of people. It's not really just about, you know, teaching or learning. How do you onboard people into what you do for them, you know, and this immersive solution? How do you explain it to them, and how do you kind of get across the benefits of this in terms of their treatment?
How do we onboard is basically our target market is psychologists and healthcare professionals. So what we are doing is we are giving them the research, because a lot of research papers have been published. We have partnered with associations, Middle East Psychological Association, We have also partnered with Stockholm University. We have partnered with Zagreb University in Croatia for further research. And we are looking at comparative studies in between different regions. And then we are presenting those studies and those researches to the societies. They're spreading the word with us to educate their own members, saying that this neo technology has these benefits which are proven. Treatment time reduction, which is saving cost to the patient, and also reducing the waiting list, which is a huge problem around the world in the health sector, especially with the mental health. So those benefits are taking them on board. We are giving them our immersive trials. They use them. And what we have done is we have eliminated few of the core problems in the existing technology and the solution, which is there is no setup cost. Psychologists can bring any VR headset. They have any brand from home, which they mostly people they have these days. Use that one. Then there is no setup cost. There is no dependency and there is no cost involved when they start getting into using of this one. Plus the standout point for us, which is attracting a lot of people towards, is not using the graphics version, not the CGIs, is the real videos.
Yeah.
Susan mentioned photogrammetry. So we are using photogrammetry as one of the option. Then we have other tools which are embedded and giving 6 degrees of freedom, rather just having 4 degrees of freedom during the session. And a real example is a friend of mine, his sister had fear of heights. So for some odd reason, he didn't pay attention, and he took his sister to Croke Park for one of the events. And the seat was quite high. So she started getting sick until she was brought down to the lower level, right? So in clinics using CBT, what happens is psychologists ask how bad or how good do you feel? And when they start talking about the scenario or the situation, body reacts very, very slow to that particular element because they have to talk a lot and a lot of sessions with immersive technology, VR, and then being real. Body reacts much quicker. Hence, the time for the treatment is much reduced.
Yeah.
So this is self-evident when they use it. And one of the psychologists, she's the president of Middle East Psychological Association, when she looked at the product and compared with other available in the market, she used the word that other solutions are a bit cartoonish because the graphics, the way they are doing it, right? It feels brain accepts it is cartoon, it is graphics. So more and more fields are using VR as we go along. So where we started from, in next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, brain would accept that this is not real, this is graphics, right? Yeah. And that is the starting point. We are not using graphics at all.
Wow, it sounds great. The video, I love that idea of you're using the real video, so it really feels like a real environment as opposed to a virtually generated environment. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to Camille, but Bilal, are you using a certain type of headset for what you're delivering your solution?
As I mentioned, we are making it VR headset independent.
Yeah, okay, brilliant, okay.
So that will still be VR headset, but we are not tying it up with a brand.
It doesn't have, exactly. Yeah, and Camille, I think there's a question for you from the audience. They'd be interested to hear you expand a bit on what you said about headset. Do you see them as an essential tool for delivering that immersive experience? Is it headset or the highway?
For me personally, yes. And that is because of the extra immersion and presence factors that we get from being in the headset. So that visceral response to a spatial medium like virtual reality can only be activated neurologically when you're in a headset. I completely get the value of having accessibility, and WebXR is a really important kind of step, so that, you know, and agreeing with Bilal, we should be device agnostic when we're designing. But for me, yes, immersive learning does need to take place in a headset.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think it's something that a lot of people are interested in, because when Bilal Ahmed earlier in the presentation kind of laid out the spectrum of technologies, it's maybe people don't quite understand that you can have different types of immersive experiences. And certainly when we were looking at the kind of continuum to get to that truly immersive experience, the headset is obviously key to that, because the user needs to be surrounded by the environment.
Yeah, and just to build on what Bilal was saying, because I'm a fan of 360 video and computer generated environments, and actually COVID has pushed my own work more into the CG space. I was all about 360 video and first person perspective video, and the FBD piece was designed that way. And then for CAMs, because we were in COVID, we were forced to work with computer generated graphics, which has worked really successfully. And like 100% of the people who went through the pilot said that it helped their anxiety, and the anxiety levels from video 1 to video 3 were reduced by 45%. So we know it's actually working, it being in the computer generated avatar. But just something to say about that, I'm a big fan of the human kind of control, or the live performance kind of aspects. So having a human in the avatar. So I work a lot with a platform called Animotive from Retinize in Belfast, and that allows you to embody the avatar. So for instance, for Dala in the CAMS project, I embodied all of Dala's gestures and body movements and non-verbal communication, which I think you'll know if that's computer generated. And the real voice is really key as well. The human nuances that we have in voice to give you that sense of immersion and authenticity. It's a very authentic medium.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm constantly amazed by the projects yourself and Bilal are engaged in, and I think it's great to hear how immersive technology has been implemented. And I suppose a question for Susan now is, in your engagement with, let's say, businesses, are you getting a feeling that businesses are really interested in the kinds of technologies that Bilal and Camille are talking about? And I suppose related to that, how can they measure the benefit of, let's say, investing in immersive technology? What is the frameworks that they're working around to try and engage with immersive technology?
I think at the moment there is huge interest in this space of immersive technology. The biggest issue right now is, how do they go about it? So part of my remit is although my remit is helping companies who are actually developing the technology, it is I'm also helping the end users as well, because it's a little bit of a marketplace situation at the moment. We have to spin up the users in order for the companies to develop the technology to advance. It's how they measure their ROI is really case by case. There are other consultants more in tune to that than I would be, in helping them discover what their journey through AR is going to be, and how they measure that is really case to case. But like, for example, I have a workshop running in December that is about implementing, if you're a HR manager or you are tasked as a company with developing an AR project, or how to go about it. We're running a workshop in December that tackles just that. How do you even get your head around starting an AR project and implementing it and then sustaining it, which is something of an issue. You have companies who are gung-ho to get started. They think it's a great idea. They leap in, and then the headsets sit on the shelf because they don't quite know what to do next. So we're trying to address that element as well.
That's brilliant. And Susan, are there funding mechanisms that companies are engaging with to try and get help with costs of implementation and things like that?
But again, that's on a case by case, but yes, SkillNet is, we subsidize training depending on what it is. And we discuss with the companies what it is they're trying to achieve and their goals, but we subsidize anywhere between 25% and 100% of some training, again, depending on the funding mechanisms that we have in place and that we use. And then, to just add on that, there are close to 75 SkillNet networks cross-sectoral. So while I'm Immersive Technology SkillNet, if you happen to be in food manufacturing, there's Taste for Success, for example, or multiple SkillNets for multiple industries. They would probably end up coming to me to find out more about the technology or what it is that they need to do first, but I'm not the only port of call. But yes, but primarily we fund that training either in-house or public training to upskill, or we develop initiatives. At the moment, we're looking at apprenticeships. I'm on the advisory board for developing apprenticeships in immersive technologies. So we may see something like that come online in the next 18 months or so.
Brilliant. Thanks for that information. That's great. A couple of questions from the audience here, and I don't know who best to ask these questions to. So maybe I'll just pick one of the panelists and you could defer the question to someone else, or if someone else wants to jump in. But a really interesting question from Cormac here, and it might be related to something the area Bilal is in, but he says, when looking at teenagers, do you believe that there are limits? And obviously this doesn't just apply to teenagers, but I think it's an interesting question about the limits of technology. Do you believe there are limits to overcoming struggles such as anxiety, depression, or related conditions using immersive technologies when comparing to in-person counseling or other current in-person solutions?
What I would say into that one is, in our solution, we are not replacing a psychologist.
Yeah.
We are giving immersive technology as a helping tool for especially kids and teenager scenario, where they are more adaptive to the newer gadgets. They will be more, I would say, leaning towards using these gadgets for the treatment, because another study shows, and another solution for kids who are afraid of needles. I mean, needle itself is a big phobia itself, but kids. So when VR headset is put on kids, smaller kids, right? They are watching their favorite cartoons or show. And when they're pricked with a needle, they even did not notice what has happened to them.
Okay, because they're in another reality.
This is basically virtual reality is to distract the brain. Another research was done in the UK a while back, at a computer engineer. She developed a system board and she brought it down to a very small size watch. And she put it on a patient of Parkinson's. So Parkinson patient was quite young, and she was an artist, a graphics designer before she got Parkinson's. So when this watch was turned on and she was asked to draw something, in years, she was able to draw a small diagram and was able to write her name. So what that shows, that perturbation this watch generated, that signals, so that distracted the brain into a different direction, and the part which was controlling the Parkinson, that was released.
Yeah.
So this virtual reality and immersive technologies, these are to distract and train the brain accordingly. Yeah,
it reminds me of the old mirror box experiment, for reducing ghost pain in amputees, that they could, it's like creating, telling the brain that there's an alternative reality that they didn't know about before. It's brilliant to hear, Bilal, you talk about, things like phobias and Parkinson's, and it's great that immersive technology has been used in those areas to really help people. It really shows the power of immersive technology. And thanks, Camille, by the way, there was a lot of questions coming about the stats behind, immersive learning and traditional learning. And obviously we could be here all day talking about stats, but yeah, Camille just put in the chat that her email address, Camille at adaptustraining.com, if you want to email her for any follow-up on any of the studies she's done. And actually, Camille, this is maybe a question you could answer, but it's also a question that Susan or Bilal could answer. And it's something that Bilal Ahmed touched on in his presentation is, I suppose the question is really about the design of these environments and the goal of the user or the learner. And I suppose it's how do you design these environments where that the learner isn't getting distracted by just the kind of aesthetics of the environment, but they're being led to focus on the actual topic at hand, which is maybe learning something or completing an experience. In Bilal's case, it might be a treatment of something, but maybe Camille, you're at the forefront of designing a lot of these things. What are the design challenges in designing these experiences so that they're directing the user to learn something rather than just be distracted by the environment?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because when you're in a 360-degree sphere, how do you guide the user's attention? And one important thing to mention is what we'd say in immersive storytelling is the space is a character. So the minute you arrive in a virtual space, and no matter how populated or how sparse, it invokes an invitation, or ideally it should. And you need to leave assimilation time for people to connect with that space, and then, have breathing space literally before they step into any sort of training. And yeah, overwhelming a user is really easy in VR. And if you're giving them a lot of verbal instruction and you're showing them a lot of visual at the same time, the research is showing that they don't take in the voice, the narration, because the visual sensory perception is just taking over most of their available brain power, and you're in 360, so you've got a lot of visual input going in. So less is more, allow a lot of space, and really take extra time and modularize the content so that it's in bite-sized form. It's very kind of gentle in its approach, especially for new users. The impact, it's about 70% more impactful on your senses the first few times you try VR. So you really need to let people kind of have that space and bring them in really gently into the journey, and then ramp up the training maybe in successive modules, and then you can have more and more input, but really kind of paring it back is good from a design perspective. And just there's like 9 design principles that you want to follow in terms of UX for VR, so that you give the user a comfortable experience and mitigate motion sickness. So happy to share those notes with anybody as well.
Brilliant. I'd like to say sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add in there that we're currently, Immersive Tech is currently running workshops in VR storytelling, design and creation tools. It's a series of 3, but we got such a good response to those that next year we will be looking at running a more in-depth, longer courses around storytelling, because it's such an intricate part of the whole experience, especially of VR and the whole content aspect of it. Camille is going to be working with me on that. So if anybody is interested, they could just follow at Immersive Skills on Twitter. I announce all upcoming courses there.
Brilliant, and we'll share those details in our post session communications. Thanks for that, Susan and Camille. I'm afraid we're nearly out of time. The time has flown, and we are 1 minute to 2. So I suppose we'll leave it there. It'd be great to talk for another hour about all the different products. I mean, like, it's great to see. I think the 3 panelists have really shown just how much there is in this space and how much there is to talk about. And I would really implore our attendees to get in touch with any of our panelists to find out more and to engage with them, or to contact us here at Learnovate. And we will send a follow-up email to all participants to share their details with you. So I think that's about it, guys. Anyone want to add anything, or anything? Got anything to plug? Now's your chance.
What I would say is don't be afraid of trying new things. As Bilal Ahmed said, only learning we have is when we do experience we have when we do practical learnings.
Yeah.
And until you go into the waters, you won't know the depth. So don't be afraid of trying new things.
Yeah.
Don't stop being curious.
I think that's a good note to leave it on, Bilal. So thanks for that. Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Susan. Thanks, Camille, and thanks, Bilal, for your time today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, Richard.
And for the audience, we will be sharing follow-up communications with the details of our panelists and some further information on how to get in contact with Learnovate and to find out about our immersive technology research. So for now, thank you from me, Richard Hart, and thanks to Bilal Ahmed for his earlier presentation. Goodbye, everyone, and have a nice day.